Hello. In this chapter, I'd like to look at the main line of the bishop g5, knight and 10th move g4 followed by b5. The position I talk about arises after moves e4 c5, knight f3 d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight f3 a6, or knight of Tabia, and 6 bishop g5. This is the last chapter, I believe, on the bishop g5 knight, so we're almost there, just a little bit more. e6, f4, bishop e7. Queen f3, queen c7, long castle, the main line. There's of course a separate chapter on all the sidelines. Knight d7, and here we look at the move g4 once again. G4 is the main move, as I've already told you. In the previous chapter, I give the move h6, which I believe is an excellent new variation actually. But just to give you another option and to comfort you, not that you feel cornered into just one line, I would like to give you the b5 system as well. In fact, even within b5, I want to show the few options that black has. But it's a very reliable line. It's been played a lot more on the high level than h6, and it still is played by strong players. I've mentioned various times that Grishu played it against me. He doesn't play bad lines as far as I know. And it's been played a lot in correspondence chess as well. It's been tested, and it is definitely okay for black. But of course, there are a lot of variations to know and to remember, and there are some different pitfalls that black can fall into. So my main recommendation certainly would be h6. I think it's definitely easier to play as well. But still, I will give you a full overview of move b5. White has to take on f6 with the bishop. That's really the main move, the one that all the white players also know they have to make. I mean, if white plays, he basically doesn't have another sensible move. E5 is always made by bishop b7. That's not a move, and a3 is too slow. Black has various ways. These such as bishop b7. Bishop f6 is basically the only continuation. Here we take with the knight. At some point, I liked the bishop f6, which was one of the inspirations behind the move h6. I always liked this bishop f6 idea, g5, bishop d4. It works perfectly here. The problem with bishop f6 is not g5, but the move bishop takes b5. That is a very strong move. Now, ab, knight b5, there is some serious issue with knight d6, and this position is just not good, although it is similar to one we looked at in the 10 bishop d3 variation. I'm not sure if you remember that, but I hope you do. But in this particular instance, this is a problem. And after bishop d4, bishop d7, there is also some complications here. Sorry, rook b8 first. Bishop d7, g5, and so on. There is some forced lines here too, and they also seem to end not so well for black. So bishop f6 is something I once tried to make work a long time ago, but it just doesn't quite work. Instead, I'm recommending knight x6 here, and now white goes for g5. There is alternative in bishop g2, but it's not a very good move. Here I recommend bishop b7, g5, knight d7, a3, and here there are a lot of different ways to play, and I'll just show you the main line: castle, h4, b4. Again, it's possible to play queen b6, prepare before rook fc8. Basically, this move bishop g2 is also not really a move, but let me just show you anyway. Very nice ideas. Before, I've shown this idea before in similar positions. As I said, it's good to know all these resources because they can appear in different number of positions. So before is one of those themes that keeps coming back. A b a5, b5 a4. Once again, getting that a3 a2 push, sometimes king b1. Now here we first play rook fc8. We want to make sure a3 comes a lot more painfully than it would now. White plays rook h3, protecting the c3 knight, and after a3 he wants to go b3. And now I play a very strong new move, e5. Now white has two options. If knight d e2, we play knight b6, threatening d5, knight c4, all sorts of things. We don't, in fact, need to rush with a3, because after b3 it might be hard to get to the king. We are also quite happy to keep the pawn on a4 for the time being as well. Whereas after knight f5 we play bishop f8 first, and after king a1 we do push a3, b3 a2, and here once our bishop gets to the long diagonal, this will be very dangerous for white. So an example, h5, d5, very strong, opening the bishop. The bishop will now try to get to the long diagonal via b4, and already here actually the computer realizes that white doesn't have defense any longer. So a very nice example line, important to start with e5 here, decide where the knight goes. Only if knight goes to f5, then go for this a3, a2. Think if knight to e2, go for knight b6. But that is for 12 bishop g2. Everybody and their dog plays the move g5, knight d7, and f5. Again, white players know it usually. Players who play bishop g5, neither, even if they are low ranked, even they're amateurs, usually if they play bishop g5 neither, it means they study their theory, so they should know this really very big old tabia, so everybody should know that f5 is the move here. h4 is just very slow. After b4, knight e2, bishop b7, black is very comfortable, and we might want to castle long, almost knight comes to c5. Just very fine for black. Again, in this line, in terms of long-term factors, black is doing very well. We've got the bishop pair, a fine position, and we're only worried about some concrete, quick attempts by white to break our position. If he plays some waiting move, and even h4 here, just too slow, and black is just very fine. Now f5 is the point. The g5 pawn is hanging, but that is the whole point. This is a pawn sacrifice, temporary pawn sacrifice. Now there's tons of old theory. The old main line, at least for a long while, has been the move knight c5. It's a terrible variation after f6, gf, bishop f8. When I was a kid or a teenager, this has been debated a lot. I've had a few games myself here with white in some rapid tournaments. I remember. It's been debated, but this is really very, very dangerous. Like the variations are involved, like some sacrifice with rook g1, rook g7, sometimes knight d5 sacrifice. Black does have some long-term positional factors like this e5 square and so on, but by the concrete variations, if you check with the strong computer and go through the correspondent games, you will discover that this particular old theory is just really, really dubious for black, really dangerous. Knight c5 is not what I would like to recommend, definitely not. But there are two options I think that are quite decent. There is bishop takes g5 line and the relatively fresh short castle. At some point, short castle became a thing. It was not a thing at all. I think probably in the past, before people had computers, before people started trusting computers, they just assumed that short castle is suicidal because they probably thought f6 after rook g1 or immediately will crush black, and I can imagine that that's what you think. But as people started checking stuff move by move with the computer, it turned out this system is actually fine for black. Besides that system, there is bishop takes g5 check, sort of falling for the trap, but actually it's pretty decent, and it leads to some interesting positions that we will see where white could be slightly better or not. It's really a matter of perspective. Basically, a pretty reliable line, and actually I think a pretty easy backup. So I recommend bishop g5 for sure as your safe backup here. After king b1, we play knight e5. Sorry, there was also some trend short castle f6, knight b6, leading by force to some deep endgames as well. Pretty sad for black. I prefer knight e5. And now queen h5. So the point is, after f5, bishop g5, king b1, that we cannot keep our extra pawn. We have to give it back. So knight e5, queen h5, we are losing the e6 pawn because the g5 bishop is hanging as well. Here there are two lines that I would like to recommend. Now the all theoretical moves are queen d8 and queen e7, as if on purpose, the modern computers recommend two other moves, h6 and bishop f6. So, I'm obviously sticking to the computer recommendation. These days, computers are so strong; they definitely know better than the old masters. So let's look at both the options. Bishop f6, one of the two. Both of them lead to similar structures. White wins back the e6 pawn and gains dominance over the d5 square. So, for example, after f e6, g6, he throws knight into the center with knight d5. Knight on d5 is very strong, and it will never be attacked by the pawn anymore. It's just very dominant. However, we also have an asset. Our knight on e5 is just as brutal and as good. So in this line, you trade one square for the other and hope it is all right. Black king is a little bit weaker, but it's still pretty safe. So line continues with queen d8. We have to keep an eye on the f6 bishop. E takes f7. King takes f7. And after queen e2, we play bishop g4, and white has the move knight c6. Otherwise, he's losing in exchange. And after bishop e2, knight d8, bishop d8, bishop e2, rook b8. Just a good move, guarding some squares, and getting out of all sorts of knight forks potentially. So we get this kind of endgame where, which is quite typical for this particular line, where I believe the position should be around balance. We have both good knights, and white has majority somewhere around the center queen side, and we have majority on the king side. So not much to worry about here. Main move after bishop f6 is knight takes e6, and after bishop e6 fe castle, we get a similar position. White gets the d5 square, knight d5, queen d8. Again, we have to keep an eye on the f6 bishop. White plays bishop h3. We trade the f pawn for the e pawn, f e6, bishop e6, king h8. And again, this position is sort of a matter of assessment. You could claim white has a small plus because his knight is for some reason better than ours, or his king is a little safer than ours. You could argue, but it mostly depends on the matter of perspective, and the most the computers think the position is around balance, and I think frankly it is pretty fine, and it's very playable over the board. And we also have our ideas on the long diagonal. One day, we'll throw maybe the knight to c4, maybe break the c3 pawn with a5, d4. So a decent backup there with bishop takes g5. Instead of bishop f6, there's also h6. Similar, very similar. After fe, we have g6. Now the line is completely forced. Knight d5, queen b7 or a7 is the same. Queen h3, castle, ef, queen f7, queen b3, and bishop g4. Very important to mobilize our pieces quickly. And now white has bishop h3, where we trade bishops. Otherwise, bishop e6 wasn't coming. And after we trade bishops, we play rook a8, and we have basically a decent position. Intending knight c4, knight f3, have decent counterplay against the e4 pawn. King is pretty safe. I think this is fine. Again, white has this d5 square, but in this line we have to accept it and just roll with it. After h6, again, knight takes e6 is probably the most critical. And now we take and play g6. And we get a similar position once again after ef, take with the king. I think this is more precise. The king ends up on g7 anyway, and the queen is not so well placed on f7, so king f7 is better. And now that moves queen into open h3. Here it is important to play queen to c5, and not to allow any queen c3 business after queen d8. And after rook h8, knight d5, queen c5, queen g3, we have king g7. After h4, there is rook f3. Important to kick the queen away and get this f4 square from the bishop. After queen 1, bishop f4, we're doing just fine. After queen e2, now that the queen is no longer able to reach the c3 square, we can just play queen d8. The point is that we also protect from the move h4. and don't give white this h4, h5 push, which would weaken our king. And now that we have this h4 square under control, we bring the king to g7. King to g7, and knight on d5 alone is not going to do that much damage to our position. Again, basically very similar. h6 takes g6, or bishop f6 takes castle. Similar positions. I believe they're quite fine for black, so definitely a line worth checking out. And in fact, 13 castle, I'm giving it because it's been played really a lot, also at high level, and also the correspondence chess, so it's been really tested very much and it works. That's why I'm giving it. But in terms of practical chess, I think bishop takes g5 is a very nice little shortcut there. But castle, let's look at it. Just the more options, the better. Also, it's nice, to troll your opponents if they will, especially if you are a more serious player whose games end up in databases and your opponents are preparing against you. Then it will be nice that your opponents know that they have to have something ready for, first of all, for the h6 line, then also for g5 line, and also for castle. And that is very discouraging, that they have to face 3 variations, all of which seem to be fine for black. So I think that is good sometimes to, to have some variety and keep in mind how your opponent feels when preparing for you. That is also why I am in general recommending, by the way, sound openings, because I feel when your opponent is looking in database and prepares for you, if he sees that you play some line which is objectively bad, it gives him hope already before the game that good things are going to happen. And I think this psychological aspect really matters. I don't know if it matters on all levels. It certainly matters on very high level. I can speak for myself in this case, but I think it matters also on all the levels. And I think if you play sound systems, your opponent will not see targets in your repertoire. He will also feel less enthusiastic during the game against you. But anyway, let's look at third castle. Here there are a lot of tries though, so this is not easy. I have to be honest here. For example, queen h5, very dangerous move. White wants to swing the rook across. Black has to play b4, rook d3. We have to take on c3. See, when they are attacking us, the first instinct of many players is to try and defend, but sometimes you cannot really defend. So you just have to at least have something in return, like piece. And then if you have a piece, perhaps you will then be able to defend with something very desperate. So what I mean is, for example, after here, b takes c3, after rook h3, we can now give up a bishop with bishop takes g5. And after queen g5, queen d8, very strong move. We have won a piece, so now we can give back a piece in order to defend. So this is a pretty good defense, and it's been played by Firouzja in 2015. Firouzja in 2015 probably was like 2 years old or something. But he nevertheless knew this line, very, very impressive. Or maybe even found over the board. Both cases are very impressive. Rook takes c3, move 16 is also very critical. Queen b6, only move. Knight c6, attacking the bishop. Now strictly only move bishop f6, not rook e8, because fe, and we're losing everything. Because fe, there is queen e8. Bishop f6. Now gf is fine, we play knight f6. Again, we gave up a piece after taking one. Queen h4, bishop b7. This knight is cementing our king side. We are fine. Knight e7, king h8, bishop g2. Protecting the e4 pawn is met by e5. So the knight is knight on e7 is doing us no damage. Knight on f6 is there. Note, if knight wasn't on f6, white would have queen h7. Sorry, king h7, rook h3 mate. Those of you who have also bought this checkmating patterns course on Chessable surely know this, but the knight on f6 is not happening. Instead of g takes f6, very dangerous little move, 18 e5. g6, only move, insane position, absolutely insane position. I didn't even try really to attempt to explain why it is an only move. I can try to figure it out right now, but no need. Just you have to play g6 to remember this line. No way around it. Queen h6 is met by queen f2. Very important. Very important. Now the point is, if we play the natural bishop g7 first, then there is knight e7, king h8, queen h7, king h7, rook h3, bishop h6, rook h6, king g7, f6, knight f6, eaf. That's the checkmate. But if we had the queen on f2, which is what we do here, and let's say now white would move the bishop or something like this, then at the end of the same line we would have queen takes f6. That's why we start with queen f2. Crazy stuff. Really something you have to remember. So if you want to play this line, do your move trainers thing, please. Please do that. It's very important. G6 queen h4 is also is actually the best move. Now we play bishop takes e5, and after knight e7 check, we have to go to h8, and after fg, knight g6, we have to go to g8, and after knight e7, which is the only move, we have to go back to h8, and this is a perpetual. An insane line, definitely something black should know by heart if he plays this system. So queen h5, a very good try. f6 also very tricky direct try. We have to take gf6, and take with the knight. White goes e5, we have to take d takes e5. Queen a8 is not a big deal because of bishop b7. There's a common idea that the queen is getting trapped there. Also d4 knight is hanging, by the way, so it's also a problem. But knight e6 is the point. Now after bishop b7, white goes queen g3 check, king h8, knight takes e5, and he sets up some tricks with knight takes f7. And also rook g1, I believe, is a threat, which no, we have to play bishop d6 here. And yeah, so what I was trying to figure out here is why we don't play rook c8, and the reason, as far as I can see, is that rook g1 and knight h5, queen h8 is there. I guess this is the big trap. So sometimes you see I take computer by his word and don't really check why natural moves are losing. But rook c8 is losing. The only move is bishop. The only two moves are bishop d8 or bishop d6, keeping in touch with the f7 pawn. And now this rook g1 is not no longer working because after knight h5, queen g8, there is this pawn protected by the queen. And white should take on d6, rook d6. We cannot take, of course, because of knight f7. Rook f7, queen d6, a simple tactic. We take on h1 here. Now the rook is nicely in the way of the x-ray. So white has to come back. Now we play rook ac8. All played in Sherlock against Zhu Wenjun. Zhu Wenjun, by the way, was, I believe, definitely one of the first players who played this line with short castle, possibly the first. Very well prepared Chinese woman world champion as well. Bishop d3 now, we should improve on Zhu Wenjun game with bishop d5, queen g5. Now we have knight e4, knight takes e4, and f5. It's important, obviously, not to get checkmated here with queen f6. So f5, and this square is protected, and now both the knights are hanging. White has a draw with knight d6, queen d6, and knight g6. A nice little combination, securing a draw. If here takes, check, sorry, here, just a brief check for rook g1, but we have king f7, and the king runs away, so white should just take the perpetual. f6, another move definitely to remember. And h4, not very dangerous to play here. b4, we in general like to kick this knight away. Knight ce2, here we can play bishop b7. In this particular case, fe is still not a threat, can take back. Then the queen is hanging as well. So here, pardon me, fe, we should not take back because the queen will move and the e6 pawn will be attacked. So here we play knight c5, hit back the e4 pawn, and ef, we have rook f7. So that's there, and after king b1, we play e5, f6, ed. We'll see similar positions later. fe7, rook a8, knight d4, and here we play knight c5 with counterplay against the e4 pawn. On move 16, there's also bishop g2, and now we take on f5, knight f5, and rook fe8. And white's kingside pawns sort of lost, have lost the potential with the f5 pawn gone, and these 2 pawns alone can do little damage to us. We want to play bishop f8 and rook ac8, countering against the c2 pawn and against the e4 pawn, so black is doing pretty well here. h4 is a rare move. f6 and queen h5 were far more dangerous. Of course, the question is why not fe6, and here it is indeed f takes e6. That was the line that caused some confusion for me. Here we do take f takes e6. In the other position, when we played knight c5, things were different. Here the d5 square is under the knight's control, so we have to take fe6. And now after knight takes e6, rook takes f3, and knight takes c7. White is a pawn up, but we regain it with bishop takes g5, king b1, and rook b8, a little bit more accurate. The knight anyway will have to return from c7, and the rook is better placed on b8. Now this endgame is fine for black, as they have established a long time ago already. So f6 is not a dangerous move. It's mostly the queen h5 and f6. And the very main move is rook g1. It's not as dangerous as queen h5 or f6, but this is the way for white to try and fight for the objective advantage. Basically, not queen h5, for example, is let's suppose the opponent doesn't know anything. Then of course queen h5 is almost deadly. You are likely to checkmate your opponent. But if your opponent knows everything, then rook g1 is the most testing move, because even if he knows everything, there is still some chance to fight for advantage. That's the logic. Here we played b4. It's important to kick this knight away before we push e5, so that there is no knight d5, knight ce2, e5. Now, if the knight goes back, knight b3, we have f6. We just block everything on the dark squares, and after g6, h6, white has no piece to sacrifice on h6. He has no dark square bishop, so our king is inside a little, what shall we call it, castle. You get the point. The king is safe here. f6 is the main move, and we have to take the knight. We cannot allow knight to come to f5, so we take the knight, f takes e7, and rook e8. Here, white has 2 options. He can take on d4, which is the main move, and there is also the move e5, which is a decent attempt at an advantage. But black has to know a few things, and if he does them, then position is equal. Rook a7 is very strong. Later on, it will be important that rook from a7 guards the g7 pawn after e6, fe6, g6. White is trying to open up the kingside hg, knight f4, trying to get the g6 pawn, knight e5, queen g3, queen e7, knight takes g6, and queen f6. And now we see that the rook has joined the defense, indeed, as planned. And after rook takes d4, we go for an endgame, knight g6, queen g6. Rook is hanging, so we cannot grab this rook, so we have to go for an endgame. And this endgame is fine. I remember when I looked at it a long time ago, and the computer was claiming some advantage for white, but the stronger computers have shown that this is completely fine. There are many ways to play. You can play simply d5, e5, I believe, and start with rook f8 as well. So rook f8, for example, bishop d3, d5 takes e5, and it's actually 3 pawns against 3 here. Not much to worry about. It's very goodish endgame. But black does have to know this rook a7, and also not panic. Grab all the pawns, bring the knight to e5, bring the queen here to f6. Important line to know, this 18 e5. Definitely worth a shot for white. Knight d4 is main, knight e5, and now there are 2 major queen moves. Queen b3 and queen f4. Let's look at queen b3 first. Play bishop g4 here. White has 2 options, bishop e2 and rook d2. After bishop e2, we take and play a5. In general, it's common in this system to push our queenside pawns forward. This is going to be the source of our counterplay. And obviously, the e7 pawn can be picked up at any moment. It's pretty much doomed. After 20, rook d2, we have a few options. There is some crazy complications after queen takes e7. I'll just show the beginning. Knight e6 here, knight f5, queen takes g5, bishop e2, g6, knight d6, rook e8, rook takes g4, knight g4, queen takes f7, king h8, and h4, very strong move. Queen e5, attacking the knight. Queen b7, incredible move. If we take with the rook on d6, we takes the knight on, takes the rook on a8, so it threatens knight f7 now. We have knight h6 suddenly. The knight not only defends itself, it was hanging, but also protects the f7 pawn, the f7 square, sorry. And this is kind of okay for black. Crazy stuff, definitely. In the text of the move trainer, if you want to rehearse this and play this. But simpler is the move 20a5. And after knight f5, we take and rook e7. This is a common position you get from this line. Very hard to really understand what's going on exactly. Not that much is going on here. We have a good knight on e5. There's not exactly an attack going, neither for white nor for black. In fact, very often white is going to try to get an endgame because he's got the bishop that works well on both flanks, while black will try in that endgame to go after white's vulnerable kingside pawns, in fact, and white will go for our vulnerable queenside pawns. So it is one of these cases where it is not that white plays on the king side, black plays on the queen side, but quite the opposite. In fact, white will actually play on the queen side in the endgame, and black play on the king side. Complicated stuff. f6, rook e8, very important. Rook e6 is not good because of bishop g2 and bishop d5 with the tempo. Rook e8 is more precise, and now only after bishop e2 do we play rook e6. Bishop is far away from the d5 square, and next we want rook c8, queen c5, knight c4, and so on. Again, these pawns are targets in a potential endgame, so keep an eye on that. Instead of queen b3, main move is knight in queen f4. Now black plays queen c5. Again, there is no rush taking that e7 pawn. It is doomed. We want to push a5, a4, and try to somehow improve all our pieces and get good counterplay. Now here white has two rook moves. Rook g2. Here black can play g6. Take the time to stop knight f5. Knight d3, queen 7, queen d2 is not very good here. It is good with the rook on g3, and that is because here we have bishop h3, and then we trade the bishop and have knight c4 if needed. So this is good for black. And after g6, h4, we take rook e7, bishop e2, we have bishop b7. Going after the e4 pawn, h5, knight d7. There is no danger to the king on the h file, because after hg, we take fg. In general, in these lines, the black king is pretty safe. Rook g3 is more critical, move 20. Now we cannot play g6, because there will be this knight b3 stuff, queen c7 and queen d2, and we cannot protect the d6 pawn suddenly. So here we have to play rook e7, and after knight f5, we take knight, and after e5 we get the position that we were, a similar position that we were discussing with the queen b3 variation. Again, this peculiar position with the knight against the bishop. So let's see here. It's rook c8, always useful, hitting the g2 pawn as well, c2 pawn as well. Sorry, rook g2, and now a5. We want to advance our pawns, and bishop a6 was played in the correspondence game when black should be fine. Position is very unusual, very unclear, but from what I've analyzed, it seems to be fine. Rook a8 a little more precise than rook c6 that was played. Rook a8 is a bit better. f6, we have rook e6. Bishop b7, now we've got knight g6. We don't want, of course, to allow bishop d5 at an unfortunate moment. And after queen f2, we play rook a8. And in this very endgame, indeed happens what I was talking about earlier. Black will actually play against white's vulnerable pawns on the king side, and the endgame should be balanced. Coming back to all of that, well, first of all, the main idea of this chapter is to confuse our opponents, to set them on the wrong foot, make them prepare for all of the lines, let them prepare. There is nowhere advantage, objectively speaking, neither in bishop g5, nor in short castle. Also not in our main line with h6. It's a thankless task of trying to crack the Najdorf through 6 bishop g5. But of course, we have to always be ready, always be alert. Remember the important lines, and when you repeat these variations and rehearse, you should be aware of the lines that are essential to remember, and those where you can play. So, for example, h6, which was looked at in the previous chapter. Here, this takes h4, knight b6, g5 variation, takes queen c5. For example, this particular chapter, you do not have to repeat before every game and rehearse and make sure you remember. But if you are a player who takes his opening preparation very seriously and face a well-prepared opponent, and for example, you want to play this line, then you should, of course, be aware on that given day that you play. Be alert and remember this particular line, because here, it's not about a general chess understanding or your general chess level. If Magnus Carlsen doesn't know that g6 is the only move, or that queen h6, queen f2 is the only move, I mean, it will take him a long time to try and figure it out, and in a practical game, he might also be under too much pressure to even find it. So this is just a matter of memorizing, and this is something I try to avoid in this series in general, because I am well aware of the fact that not all the viewers are top players, and not all of them want to memorize their lines every day. And that's why most of my recommendations are definitely sound, but at the same time such that you can just play these positions pretty much by ear, that it is enough to know the common ideas, typical structures, and that's what I base the repertoire on. But especially in the bishop g5 now, there are a few lines that you should sort of know if you want to be professional about it, and especially if you are choosing this line, which I definitely don't recommend as your number one choice. But if you choose this line, then you should be aware of not just aware, but be also have these lines well memorized with the queen h5 and also f6, the force stuff. And again, don't forget about this bishop takes g5 option. Now, I think it's been fun. If you haven't seen the previous chapters on bishop g5 neither, you have to definitely study all of them. But if you've been watching in the subsequent order from A to Z, then you know that we, with this video, we have completed our journey in the bishop g5 neither. And I would like to congratulate you and invite you to following journeys that are going to only be more fun. So let's continue with the next chapter. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.